Good evening. Long ago, something happened that I've been unable to get past, and me writing this is to get my mind off of it. First and foremost, I must introduce myself. My name is Franz, and I am from Guelph, Ontario. I have lived there for most of my life, but at the age of 18, I moved to Toronto for university. My life there was okay, and I even made a few friends. I began working for a pizzeria downtown. Everything seemed to be going well. This all changed when a man by the name of Craig came in. He was a very well-dressed man, wearing a three-piece suit, which is not a common sight, and appeared to be in his 30s or late 20s when he spoke. I was surprised with a very typical rural Ontario accent. After ordering his pizza, we talked while waiting for it to get cooked. He told me that he is from Sudbury and how close to the Quebec border in northern Ontario. Found great success and lives a life of luxury. I, intrigued by this, asked him what he does. He told me that he worked as a miner that had special requirements that he believed I could possibly have. My response to this peculiar knowledge with admitted skepticism over the possibility of prosperity within the career of a miner was to ask for any contact details for said job. Asked for my phone number. After giving it to him, I waited for weeks in anticipation, but to no avail, and eventually forgot about it. This all changed with the unexpected call from someone so out of the question, so improbable, came through to me. It was Craig, and he told me I got the job. Following this event, I decided it would be best to drop out of university and pursue this career up north. I took a train up there and then took a cab to the site. The journey was nothing special and my goodbye wasn't either. It seemed as though everyone already was acting as though I had left and made little difference to them, even in comparison to when I was there. Once I arrived, I once again saw this eccentric individual Craig right next to a building near the mine. The building appeared to be built in the 19th century, much older than the settlement began in the closest town, and was in a neo-Gothic gingerbread style, commonly found throughout Ontario. He welcomed me and then showed me to the mine. Everything was strange, as it felt as though we were the only people there. Everything seemed to be poorly maintained, and the closer we got to the mine, the more I felt alone. I asked Craig about the emptiness of the area, and he said it was due to the time, as it was the middle of the night on a Sunday. I cited to excuse to justify my continuous march into the mine and was unsure of the sincerity of Craig's character. I was not connected to anything he said or did, but just based off of his overwhelming feeling of dread and despair that this mine omitted. Even with what my heart was telling me, I needed the money. I sacrificed my life in Toronto for this. I was going ahead with it, and I was going to do the job. Craig showed me around the place. Appeared to be a salt mine, but he wouldn't explicitly say what the job was or what the mine was for. I realized then that I had not properly prepared myself for this, and that this was likely a bad idea. The situation I was in previously to my acceptance of this opportunity was one of immense loneliness and isolation which I had dealt with for as long as I could remember. I suppose in desperation I accepted this opportunity and up in this quite dangerous situation. Craig was much less charismatic in comparison to my memory of him. His suit looked to be in shambles, and his once endearing accent only appeared to be obnoxious and anxiety-inducing for some unexplainable reason. Following the tour, Craig then went into the mine itself. The entrance was pitch black, barely lit by a gas lamp on a nearby wooden pillar. Craig quickly disappeared in the darkness. In this situation, I likely should have just turned around and took the next train to someplace else, but I did not. I'm a curious man by nature, and I decided to follow Craig in the dark and foreboding mine against all better judgment. The descent was strange and overwhelming. I felt as though I was viewing myself through the third person, that I was completely separated from my emotions. It was as if I had left my body and it was behaving on its own. Despite the strange and overwhelming nature of the cave, there was a beauty to it. It was incredibly dark and was covered in a sea of fog, but had this grand nature of sublimity. It was as though I was standing at the foot of a dark and foreboding mountain which had seen over a millennium of history, tragedies, war, anarchy, devastation, beauty, life, and all of the likes. There was a feeling alluding an ancient nature to the location. As I went further and further into this darkness, I felt as though more and more weight and pressure was being put on me. As I walked, it grew stronger and stronger and stronger until I felt as though I was on the verge of collapse. I felt as though the weight of the world was on me, until I saw a glimmering light. At first I froze in place, and stood staring at this phenomenon. I felt this sudden feeling of warmth and acceptance as I stared at it. I felt as though this light had finally understood me in a way which I had previously begged to be understood. As I walked closer to the light, the more this feeling grew. I felt as though this weight and pressure was being lifted from me. This warm feeling grew and grew until I finally reached where the light was coming from. Ahead stood a wooden dorm frame that appeared to originate from the Victorian period, as it had pocket doors which were popular during this period. The frame was very ornate, and within it I could see a room. I followed the warmth and went forth into this strange yet comforting room. As I entered, I was overwhelmed with the scent of an old home, an aroma made up of old books, aged oak, silver, and other such antique items. The room appeared as though it was the late 19th century. The room was floored with a wooden floor in a herringbone pattern. The walls were decorated with a wallpaper that includes some coat of arms that appeared to originate from a noble family and was dark green in color and surrounded by a floral pattern. The room was furnished with what appeared to be Baroque furniture and also included a forte piano in the corner. The room also included various romantic landscape paintings which all appeared to be original. There, I sat down, and I felt like I had never sat down previously in my life. I felt as though I had finally found a context to compliment myself. For the first time, I did not feel alone. All I did was sit there in this state for what felt like both an eternity and as though time itself had stopped. Everything I had searched for and hoped for ever since I was a child was strangely fulfilled solely just by sitting in said room. While sitting there, I increasingly felt stressed at the same time. I felt as though this feeling would not last, and in the corner of my eye, I noticed a peculiarity in the flooring. There was a hidden door underneath the piano. I pushed the piano and opened the door. It was pure darkness, and the sight alone gave me a sinking feeling. I suddenly felt a presence behind me, and immediately I looked to see what it was. It was myself. It was me, even down to the clothing I was wearing, being a button-up shirt, jeans, Blundstones, and a brown leather belt. I sat there, petrified and stunned. This perfect copy of myself pushed me down, and I fell into darkness. The darkness consumed my vision, and all the warmth and acceptance I once felt now seemed to be false. I fell deeper than I previously felt possible, and all the pressure and disassociation I once felt returned, and by even stronger. Eventually, my memories stopped, and I woke up outside the cave. I'm unsure of what truly transpired that fateful day, but all I know is that never again will I accept such an opportunity. And that feeling of loneliness, no matter how hard I tried to forget, even with how much it affected me, there was always the sensation that I continue to be insignificant, that no matter how much this affected me, the room and everything remained not even affected by myself, not even remembering me.